And I said, Father, I've been through 3 abortions. And he held out his hands and he said, oh, honey. And I just bawled like a baby.
Welcome to Steadfast, a pro-life podcast where we talk about how the pro-life movement is evolving and how you can participate. I'm your host, Sammy Carroll, Education Coordinator at Life Choices Women's Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, and our prayer is that this podcast inspires you. Welcome to Steadfast. Today I got to sit down with Mary Poirier, who is just an amazing woman, and she shares her testimony of how God took something so ugly and made it into something beautiful. I must give you some trigger warnings. Mary was raped at 18, and she subsequently had 3 abortions. So this is an emotional testimony. It's a beautiful one as well, though, and I hope that this conversation blesses you. I know that this episode will do good things purely just because of how difficult it was for us to be able to sit down and record it. We both knew that the spiritual opposition meant that we were on the right track. And I will be posting or sharing all of her ministry links at in the show notes. Her husband's music, Michael John Poirier, has some beautiful music, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. And I just hope that this conversation with Mary Poirier blesses you. And without further ado, here it is. Welcome, Mary. Welcome to Steadfast.
Thank you.
We are so blessed to have you with us today. And you have a beautiful testimony and one that's going to touch so many hearts. And thank you for spending time out of your day to talk to us.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself before you share your story?
I am married to Michael. We've been married for almost 28 years. We have 3 children. Joseph's almost 27, JP 23, and Therese is 17. And we have been doing ministry full time these 28 years, even when we were engaged. And we live on donations month to month. And we travel with our children most of their life. We stopped at different places, but basically they traveled in an RV and I homeschooled and we went from church to church, and that's kind of been their life. And, you know, they have fond memories, so I don't think we messed them up too bad. But it's been quite a ride, you know. So Michael does holy hours in front of the Eucharist. He sings and has meditations. We do retreats. I give my testimony, and we have these prayer lights that help sustain the ministry. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing for 28 years.
That's amazing. And I believe that he's on Spotify, right? I was listening to the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus song on my Spotify the other day.
He just put everything on Spotify and Apple, I think he's in the process of. And so, you know, after this long, I think the music's probably over 30 years old, but it seems to still touch people and has, you know, the Holy Spirit's still working. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So he's been busy. We have a new book out called The Miracle Blossom. And I really don't want to give it away, but it's kind of a pro-life book, similar to my story. And so that's going to be going to print. We're raising the funds right now. So that should be available in the next couple months. So that's been taking a lot of our, yeah.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes so if people can hopefully donate to your ministry.
Okay, awesome.
So can you tell us your testimony, your beautiful story?
So I was born and raised Catholic. We really just went through the motions. We went to church every Sunday, and the only thing that I looked forward to was going to a restaurant after Mass because I really wasn't into it. Um, I'll back up with my mom. Um, she had my older sister and my older brother, and the doctor had told her not to have any more children because she almost died with my brother. So she got pregnant with me, and I'm almost 60 years old. So this is still a mystery to me, but they wanted her to abort me. And she said no. And during the pregnancy with me, she had a lot of anxiety and fear that she was going to die, and me too. So she ended up having me. It was fine. About 6 months later, which we know now is postpartum. Back then they didn't, and she ended up in a sanitarium back then. So she went away to a facility, and my grandma took care of me during that time. And she wanted to be back before my first birthday. So that's pretty much how long she was there. And so she came back, but the doctor, psychologists back then, I guess, really didn't know what to do, but they told her to get busy, go to work. So she went to work for her and my dad's business. And my grandma ended up taking care of me. And so looking back, the bond between my grandma and myself was kind of my mom and was my mom. And so I would go over there every weekend and we would watch all these old shows. You're really young to hear these shows, but Engelbert Humperdinck and Lawrence Welk. And we would sit there and have cookies. And she was just the joy of my life. And that went on. She was just total love to me. I grew up, my family was not emotional. So we didn't hug, we didn't talk about things. We were just going through the motions, as a family. And so there wasn't a lot of intimacy, but with my grandma, there was this total intimacy. So I was so blessed to have her in my life. And so I would spend the night there every Friday and Saturday evening. And she had a heart attack and she came to live with us for a little bit, but she was going to go back to her house. And I said, "Okay, grandma, I'm going to come with you." And she's like, "You know what, honey, not tonight." And I thought, "Okay, that's weird," because I would go with her. So she said, "I think I'll have your sister go." And so she went. And that night, my grandma died in my sister's arms.
Oh.
And I was 11. And so I woke up the next morning and I was so angry, and just so distraught. And the priest friend of our family woke me up and told me this. So I definitely didn't have intimacy with him. So it was like I felt very all alone. As far as talking about it, of course not, because we didn't talk, intimate things. And so I didn't grieve at all. Um, I just became very angry. So that was like eighth grade, maybe seventh. I was going to be 12. So yeah, it was going into eighth grade, freshman year. And so, kind of what I learned to be busy, I made myself very busy in high school. I excelled in grades. I played tennis. I was a cheerleader. I, just busy. And so I was popular, but I just remember feeling so lonely because there was no one I could really talk to and not even knowing that I needed to talk about it, you know? So I started having going out with friends. I had a friend that was my best friend that was older than me. She was my next door neighbor. And so we started drinking. I was drinking it by sophomore year and just starting that life by sophomore year. Then I started to date my junior year. Not really date, but kind of anyway. But I met what I thought was the love of my life by 18. I remember, um, we didn't talk. We didn't talk about purity as a family. My dad just drew a picture and pretty much said, "Don't do this." I mean, and I was so embarrassed that I just wanted to get that talk over with quickly. But it wasn't out of, modesty, purity, saving yourself, none of that. So I thought, man, this boy's it. And I lost my virginity. And I remember going home that night feeling so ultimate that aloneness was like at its climax. Couldn't pinpoint it, just knew something was lost. I just remember that going home going, oh my gosh, I felt so empty. The boy ended up not being it, of course. And oh my gosh, that started the series of going downhill. So I started dating guys, becoming very sexual when I was 18. It was my senior year. We were at a party. I was drinking quite heavily because I don't remember the evening except little blurbs, and I was raped by this one boy at a party. And then I ended up dating the guy, which was so insane. But I became pregnant and I really didn't know what to do about that. I went to another party and I ended up bleeding so much that I thought I miscarried because I went to the hospital and they said that I had miscarried. But then when I came back home, they did more blood work and said I was still pregnant. And who knows, you don't know. But the doctor said that I was still pregnant. And um, I thought there is no way that I can do this. I was ready to go to ASU. I just couldn't do it. And my mom wanted to send me away to Seattle. My aunt from Seattle lived up there. And so that was the shame, send her away. And my dad said he wanted to take me. And so, of course, I sided with my dad, which was so sad, but we went. And, to this day, I'll never know if that was an abortion or if I really miscarried. But we went through that act. And oh my gosh, it just kept spiraling. I just kept dating guys and being physical. And I got pregnant again right before ASU. I thought, absolutely not. And went and had another abortion and went to ASU. Everything kept spiraling down, drinking, drugs, everything. And then at 25, I got, well, excuse me, 22, it was 85, the year 85. I got pregnant again. And this boy really wanted me to keep the baby. And I said, absolutely not. And so everything just kept going. It just kept going in that direction from 18 to 22. And I was working, I ended up quitting ASU because I needed to get my residency. and I was working in a sales job, and I was making all this money. And I had a fancy car. I had the clothes to make sure that I looked good. I was still living the life of what we're talking about here. But I thought to myself, if I look good, no one's going to know what's going on inside. And I remember my dad saying to me, because he came out to Arizona, he sat in my car and he's like, Mort, because he used to call me Mort. He goes, "You really have made it." And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, as if he only knew, what I've been through since that time he took me. I was really, I was sad and I was mad. And I just thought, if he only knew. So this went on. The tipping point was I was traveling down in my little sports car down to Tempe, and we were having a function for the company. And I was planning on sleeping with my married boss. And I thought, I'm driving down going, what the heck are you doing? You know, I mean, when's this going to stop? You know? And I felt a presence in my little passenger seat, and it was Jesus. And I felt him looking right at me. And he said, Mary, you can turn your car around right now and let me help you, or you can keep going like you're going. And it was so strong that I turned my car around and I sat in my condo and I said, okay, Lord, if this is you, you have to help me. I can't do this anymore because I don't want to live. I was 25 at the time. I'm like, I don't want to live anymore. And I had such a good cry and I felt all this peace. And I just went to bed and I got up the next day, and my boss, who I was supposed to meet, must have been so drunk that night that he doesn't even remember that that was all going to happen. So it was like God was just totally protecting me that way. Well, 2 days later, my aunt calls, the one from Seattle that my mom wanted to ship me up to. She owned a tour company, and she called me out of the blue, which I know wasn't out of the blue, but she said, Mary, I'm taking this tour in Europe, and we're going to stop at all these cities, and then we're going to stop at this village where apparently Our Lady is appearing. Would you like to go? And all I could think, I just remember looking up, going, they work fast. It was so amazing. I thought, oh my gosh. And I said, well, Aunt Mare, I I kind of don't have a lot of money, even though I made a lot of money. I just spent it. And she goes, well, let me know. Let me know what happens. And my mom calls, just I think a mom knowing, she goes, honey, we we will pay for this. Just go. And so I went, and we stopped at all these little cities in everywhere in Yugoslavia, and we stopped at this village. And as I was getting off the bus, I didn't say the part about I did go to confession over all this. I went to confession during this time, being the Catholic that I was. Um, but I kept feeling there's no way that I was forgiven. There's no way. I thought maybe one, but not two or three. I felt like there was no way I was going to be forgiven. And that's when the spiral kept happening. So when I got on the bus, I thought, I have to go to confession again. I just have to. And so I went and back in the day, it was 88. Um, you knelt in the dirt, which was pretty amazing. So I knelt in the dirt and because it was outside the confessionals, and I said, Father, I've been through 3 abortions. And he held out his hands and he said, Oh, honey. And I just bawled like a baby. And he said to me, You know, the root of the sin is not the abortions. The root is how much you have hated yourself all this time. And so he took me through every relationship that I could think of. He said, We are going to do, now looking back, I don't know if he said this, but like soul tie, we're going to get rid of all this. So he took me through every man that I was with that I could possibly think of. And he said, Now, and the drinking and the drugs, of course, he said, Now we're going to name your babies because they're truly your babies. And he said, What's the first one's name? And I said, Catherine. And he said, Catherine is your little girl. And he said, What's the second one's name? And I said, John. And he said, John is your boy. He said, What's the third one's name? And I said, Mary. And he said, Well, Mary's your little girl. And as he absolved me, I had my eyes closed and I saw all this darkness coming up. And I saw all this light just pouring in. And he said to me, Your sins are forgiven. And don't let Satan ever tell you again that the tomb is closed, because the tomb is open. So that was quite the confession. And I went over to the side of the church and I just bawled my head off. And I felt all this love. And I looked up in the clouds and I was just thanking God. And as I was looking up at the clouds, I hear 3 voices say in my heart, this was all in my heart, we love you, Mommy. And I thought, okay, how can they possibly love me after all that I did? But it lasted like a second, that guilt. And all that was in me was just pure love of how much they love me. And I just sat with that. And what I felt was them, it was time. They claimed, I claimed them.
Sorry.
That's okay. But I claimed them. I claimed them that day. They were praying for that day for as long as, they were in heaven. They were praying for my conversion. And I finally claimed them and I named them. And I just felt all this peace and joy and love from them. It was amazing. And that day that I had that confession, all those times that I went to confession, of course I was forgiven, but that day God gave me the grace to forgive me. And so that was the day, 1988, that I received the grace to forgive me And so, okay, that was, you know, 88. What is that? 30. I don't even know. Do the math. 34,
34? 34
34,
years ago.
34 years ago. And I came home and I went to Wisconsin because that's where my family lived. And my mom just looked at me because I looked different. You know, I looked softer. I acted different. And I want to say, okay, everything was peachy after that. Well, of course it wasn't. I mean, I felt such healing, but there was such a process that needed to happen, the peeling of the onion, right? And so, yes, there was so much. I went through therapy. When I got back to Arizona, I started with that, and that was so healing. And just the whole family dynamics, of me not loving myself. But when I got back into church was the key, because I started going back and going to confession and praying the rosary. So all those things just were so beautiful because they all just kind of went together, you know. So um by 32, 31, I met Michael. And, it's like God was so good to give me from 25 to 31. I didn't date. I mean, I went out with guys as friends, but I didn't date. And so I had all this time to myself with God, and my therapist. But but it was so amazing because when I met him, we just knew, we knew. And we were married by the time I was 32 in 94, and we got pregnant right away. And so then the layer of the onion, right? Like, I don't deserve to be pregnant, you know, after what you did, And all I felt was God saying to me, "You're right, Mary. You don't deserve to be pregnant. It's a gift. No one deserves to be pregnant. It's a total gift from me." And when you feel those feelings of guilt, you hold your belly and you say mercy. And so I did that. I did that a lot. And JP, 4 years later, was born, and a tinge of that happened again, but I just knew it was pure mercy. And then at 43, Terezi was born. Mercy, total miracle at 43. And so I guess, the big reason I do share my story, and of course, it has to do with abortion, but it has to do with anything in our life that we feel is too big that God can't forgive. It's not true. It's a lie.
How did Michael respond? How was that even dating after? I mean, it'd been so long and your past relationships were obviously, painful. How was that for you and for him entering into a new relationship?
So amazing because we met. He was just coming out of the order. He was discerning being a brother in the Dominicans, and he came over. I was at the preschool at St. Maria's. I started that preschool. And so I was the director, just sitting in my chair, and he comes over and he goes, "So and so says we have to meet." And, I knew him because of his, his singing, but I thought he was still in the order. Now, this
Oh.
is this is my version. His version is not. We have two different versions of this, but my version was, I remember him being in the order.
Mhm.
And we got to talking very deep, and I told him my whole story in the first meeting. I just said, I just feel God's calling me to talk about his mercy. And so we clicked right away. And he remembers him not being in the order, that I knew that, and that we just clicked. So I really don't remember. It's been so long, but
As long as the clicking
um,
happened.
yeah, the clicking happened. And so he adopted Catherine, John, and Mary.
Oh.
And he wrote the song Catherine, John, and Mary. I don't know if you've ever heard it,
Mhm.
but it was so healing, you know. So he was so, can I say that's really the start of what made me fall in love with him, so quickly because he got it
Yeah.
and he understands it. And to this day, you struggle with different things, intimacy or trust or whatever, because out of what I've been through, but he gets it. And so that's been really beautiful.
When did you decide to tell your kids, or have they always known that they had three siblings up in heaven?
I told each one at a different time. Um, I told Joseph when I first started speaking, so because I didn't want him to hear from any teens.
Right. Yeah.
And so I told him probably around 14, 15, um, and he just cried.
Oh.
But was but his answer was, so wait a second, I'm still the firstborn, right? Like on earth, right? But that was, but it was sad, but really consoling to him because he always felt like he wasn't the only one.
Oh.
And he
Wow.
actually say that when he was little. Do I
Wow.
do I have is there something you're not telling me? Do I have other brothers and sisters? I mean, he said that
Oh
once.
my gosh.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah. And JP, probably about the same time, maybe. And Terezi, I just told her sophomore year of high school. I didn't know when I was going to tell her, and it just happened. She was doing something um, for a pro-life. She was struck. That's it. She was struggling with abortion, of why it's not okay, like rape, incest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when it came up with her because I told her my story, and I think she might still struggle with it because she just doesn't. I don't think she's had a deeper conversion yet, but
Mhm.
I just think she knows my story, and but they've all been so amazingly. I'm really glad that they know.
Yeah. Do you have any we're running out of time, unfortunately, because I the Zoom call is going to end. We
Okay.
can restart it though. But do you have any, let me restart that sentence. Do you have any words of comfort or advice for someone who has been raped or who has gone through an abortion or both?
Well, of course, therapy. It's the key for people who have been through abortion, but the spirituality is the key. It's the key, the conversion to come back and to know that I don't believe women go to have an abortion to say, I'm going to kill my child. I
Right.
don't believe that. I believe whatever circumstance, my dad taking me, or just overwhelmed, or like thinking your whole future is at stake. No one goes there thinking that. I don't believe it. I just think it's all whatever the circumstance is. And so I think it's just asking God the grace to be able to forgive yourself
Yeah.
is is the key.
Do we want to talk about maybe how to approach that in other and future relationships?
The communication is key, especially when I talk to women, because I spiritually direct women, and there's some of them that haven't even shared that with their spouse, or with their person that they're dating. And I just think truth is so key, you know, to be able to share that because, it doesn't, if I hadn't shared that with Michael, all these wounds that come up here and there, how would he know like what's causing this, or the lack of trust or intimacy or whatever. It's like, but knowing that he knows it, it gives him so much, empathy and he understands. So to share that is pretty key, I believe. I can't stress as being a Catholic the importance of the Eucharist and confession and the rosary. That was so key to my healing, to my conversion.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. And I love that God makes beautiful things out of such ugly, ugly things.
Ugly mess. It was a mess. And that's what Miracle Blossom is about, is someone that ended a life, but was, you know, re, help me, re,
Blossom?
yeah, awesome. Did. But thanks. God, it's just God. It's God's grace. I said yes to going to this little village. God did the rest, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
So
Well, you did kneel in the dirt.
I did.
It's a key element there.
I really deserved to kneel in the dirt. That was good.
That was beautiful. Well, thank
Hey,
you so much. And I
you're
will be praying for your ministry.
thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be
And
praying.
hopefully I'll see you soon, actually.
I know.
We've got a wedding
We,
coming up.
okay, honey. Tell your hubby thank you. Tell
I
him
will.
quite a time to get back here.
Yeah, we knew that there would be some spiritual opposition when we're doing something good.
Yep. Take care.
See you soon, hopefully. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.